Hey guys, welcome back to Portal Talk. I am your host, of course, Calibas Ran, and with me is Marky Mark. But today we have a special treat. JM Lee is here with us, and she's going to tell us about the experience she had at RavenCon. Now, if you guys remember, some months back, we talked to her after Convivial. Marky Mark had ran over. He's like, "Yo, man, you gotta check out this author. You gotta check her out." And I had gone by her table several times, and we got the information, and we got her on the show, and we wanted to have her come back because she was going to RavenCon, which is more of an author's con. So, without further ado, I want to welcome you back to the show.
Thank you so much for having me again. I'm super excited to talk about RavenCon.
Oh no, it is our honor to have you here because I'm telling you, we don't have very many authors on the show. Um, it's just one of those things that I love to do because I'm in the midst of pushing out my second book. And hey, Taco Cat, what's going on, sir? And it's just I love hearing the processes and what other authors are doing. You know what I mean? Just to get that feel back into it. But me and Mark have been talking about you because Mark kept saying, "When are you going to get her back on the show?" And I was like, "I'm working on it. I'm working on it." So and then of course I had the death of my dad, and then that kind of slowed everything down. But
sorry to hear that.
I am here. Oh, I appreciate that. But one of the things was for him, he was like, if this is what you love doing, keep doing it. Don't stop. So I'm dedicating the book to my dad, but the show is definitely going to continue to keep going. I told Mark, if I get down, I need you to pick it up and keep going. So but this is what we do as a Cosmic Portal. We promote those that we feel are really out there trying to make their mark and trying to, or if their product was just good enough that we can't say no to. And everything that you were talking about, we love. So without further ado, tell us about RavenCon. How was it, when it was, the whole 9 yards?
So RavenCon was fantastic. I kind of ended up going kind of last minute. I was at Convivial, and I haven't been to a RavenCon in many, many years. The last time I went, I would have still been, a little baby teen author. And so when I ran into one of the event organizers for RavenCon, it was kind of crazy to reconnect with a couple of the people that organized that event again after so many years, because it's been a while. And so they were kind enough to invite me as a guest again, very last minute. I kind of walked over and was like, "Hey, could I maybe come to RavenCon?" And they were very generous and said yes. And originally I was just going to do panels, and I wasn't going to have a table or anything. I was just going to be wandering around in costume and going to panels, and I was going to carry around a little cart of books and walk around yelling anything from the trolley, just like in Harry Potter. And then I did that Friday night. I didn't carry around the book cart because it was Friday night. I had a whole bunch of panels, and it was just a little bit too hectic. But Saturday, I got there with my dad, and I ran into kind of the person that's in charge of like the authors and whatnot and all of their tables. And 3 or 4 authors hadn't shown up for the weekend, and they never contacted them or anything like that. And so I was like, well, could I maybe steal this empty table that nobody's using? And so it worked out really, really well. They were so kind to offer me a table. Like I said, the other people just never showed up. So I took advantage of that and was able to set up. And I would say it was probably one of the best weekends as far as book sales goes for me in a long time. There was a lot of readers there, and I would say this was probably one of the first events where I had people follow me from panels, because the way that the convention is set up, it's very spread out. You have several different buildings and whatnot. It was a really cool location, very historic looking. And so one area or one building was where the panels were. So I was very surprised to have people actually like find me afterwards after the panel, because normally people, they come and they listen, but they usually don't find you afterwards. But a lot of people said, "Oh, I heard you talking, in your panel, and so I wanted to come and check out your book." And it was really cool. It was nice being surrounded by not just cosplayers, but also readers. That was very helpful. Sometimes, I've been going to conventions for well over 15 years now trying to sell books, and you can always tell when you have readers that attend as well, because it's so hard to sell books when you don't have people that want to read, and then you're just trying to sell a paperweight. So it is really nice when you have people that genuinely enjoy reading and want to find out more about your book. And I met some fantastic authors, connected with a lot of awesome people, and did a couple book swaps, but it was a lot of fun.
That's one of the things that yeah, I guess you really have to know your convention. That's kind of the thing that with Convivial, we notice it's more of that laid back, what I mean, it's that chill con. And I love that. I really do. But trying to find, like you said, like, if I wanted to try to sell my book there, I mean, although there were authors there like yourself and everything else, I think my sci-fi genre would be kind of out of the way unless they kind of really kind of promote like they did the first year, which was sci-fi. Doing that. But I know RavenCon, like you said, RavenCon is an author's con. So that, you know what I mean, and where was it again?
It was in Glen Allen, like the Richmond area of Virginia. I'm trying to remember the convention center name.
The Hilton, right?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
It was a really cool location. Like I said, very like kind of historic looking. There was, I believe, 3 or 4 different buildings. So one building was kind of all the panels, and then you had one building that had like the stage and everything and food where people were going and watching performances. On Friday night, I got to see the drag show, which was awesome. And people were dressed up in like monster drag. It was so cool.
That is definitely awesome. I want to go to a RavenCon because I've heard so much about it. Definitely after I get my book done, so I can actually try to sell something there too. But I just thought one of the things that we loved about you was the way you run the gambit. You cosplay, you do the panels, and then you're doing the author thing, and then you went so far as, like you said, you were running around with your little cart selling from the trolley. You know what I mean? I mean, that is so awesome.
Yeah, I think that's one of the advantages of having ADHD is your brain's already all over the place. You might as well like monopolize it.
So tell us, what is your latest project? What do or is it already out? Are you working on something new?
I've got a couple exciting things coming up. I'm glad I grabbed my stack of books. So I have my book, Curse of the Blood Queen. The audiobook is currently in production, and that should be out. We don't have a specific date yet. I'm working with my narrator on that. But the sequel to Curse of the Blood Queen, it has my tabs and a little stripe, but Prince of the Coral Throne comes out June 30th, which I'm really excited for. I'm going through and doing like the final read through for that. So those are kind of my 2 biggest projects, is the audiobook and then the sequel to the first one. And I know I will add for the month of June, for Pride Month, Curse of the Blood Queen and a whole bunch of others, and a whole bunch of other books will be free for Kindle users. So if you like to read ebooks and whatnot, they will be free from June 13th through 15th for Pride Month.
That's pretty awesome right there. I did have one question as well. You said you had a few panels at RavenCon.
Mm-hmm.
What were the panels that you actually spoke at, and what were the topics that you had at those?
It was kind of a wide range. I know there was one that I was a moderator for where we talked about editing your manuscript. And it was interesting because I was on there. I was like, this little indie author, and I had somebody sitting next to me that was part of a larger, like, small press, an editor, and then 2 other people that were also on the panel that were part of larger groups. And then I was sitting there as the moderator, and the one guy goes, I wanted to be the moderator, and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Do you want to take over? And he's like, no, it's fine. And then it ended up being a great panel, just asking questions from like an indie author side to because the topic was Ask an Editor. So there was a lot of like just writing ones about finding writing groups. There was a couple about mixing fantasy with history. And so finding different ways to blend the two genres, which was a lot of fun. One of the questions somebody asked was, if you could visit any time in history, when would you go? And I said, the main villain for my book is Queen Boudica. She's from 60 AD. And I said, I guarantee I would die the second I step foot in 60 AD, but I would love to meet Queen Boudica. I know she'd kill me, but it's fine. It would be worth it to meet the vengeful warrior queen.
Yeah, I was going to say, because most of that, for me, like you said, that time frame, I need more modern technology. I have to have a bathroom.
Yep.
So I definitely couldn't do something like that.
Yeah.
You did bring up as well that your book is coming out on audio. Well, you're doing the audio now. Is it going to be Audible or like Kindle as well? And
Yeah.
what is the time frame that should be released?
So it will be available through Audible. We're using the website is called ACX. They're part of Amazon. And my narrator and I are producing it through there. Well, I say I'm producing it, but I'm not doing the work. She is. But I just get to enjoy listening to my book read by an incredible narrator. She does like all different accents because there's like British and Irish and Cockney and all different stuff. And she's doing it all. I'm just so impressed by her. I'm not sure of the exact time frame because she just like me, we both have day jobs, but she's kind of going through the final round of edits. So I'm hoping that within the next month to 2 months, that'll be released. That is my goal. And then she'll hopefully later in the year start working on book 2's audiobook, which I'm really excited for.
Okay. Yeah, I love audiobooks. For me, it's just a quicker way since I work a lot and I also go to school. It's just easier for me to do the audiobook when I'm, just doing something else. I can listen to it. I do have some books that I try to read. I picked up one at MarsCon while I was there from one of the indie authors, and I thought it was a great book. I've read probably a third of it, but I haven't been able to finish it because of all the other reading I had to do. So that's why I love when somebody says they have audiobooks, because when I'm driving, I can put it on, especially long distance driving, or when I'm working out, I can put it on. I absolutely love that for that reason. And you said that you've got the 2 books. The one is coming out. I know you said it'll be free during Pride. And how long ago did you write that one that's going to be coming out at that time?
So this one, you mean this one right here?
Correct.
So the timeline for this one was a little bit lengthy because I ended up querying this one for a little while, but I had a really hard time. I had some people interested, but as soon as I would tell people it was a 5-book series, they were like, "Oh, never mind." So I published it back in December of 2024. So it's only been out a few months now, and so far it's done better than I could have hoped, especially for, like a small indie author. And while I was querying this one, that's when I worked on the second book. So that's why, I'm able to release it a little bit faster than I normally would publish books. But I've just found that with this series, I'm just so excited and I have so many ideas for it that I feel like everything's just flowing really well. So they're coming out a little faster than I was expecting, which honestly is okay, I think.
Yeah, it's a fantastic, especially if you have the idea and the outline, so you know exactly what you're going to be putting in the books.
Mm-hmm.
I've talked to other authors, and they say that's normally what, if you have it written down, it makes it a lot quicker to write. If you notice that as well when you come into the writing.
Yeah, for sure. If I don't write it down, it doesn't exist and it doesn't happen. I used to be somebody that could just sit down and write whatever came to mind. And sometimes I wish I was still that way, but I find that I'm a really big plotter now where I like to sit down and come up with a plan, because I also like to throw in foreshadowing throughout the whole series. And so, there's stuff that's hinted in book 1 that you'll find out about in book 3. where I'm probably the only one that will ever notice that. But if somebody really enjoys the series and they go through and they reread it and they, you know, potentially have that like aha moment of, oh, I see what she did there. You know, it's every author's dream, I think, but I'm definitely somebody that likes to sit down and write out a plan. Like I said, didn't used to be that way, but I just find that it works better that way to keep myself focused and get the story written too. Because without a plan, I kind of get stuck, and that's when I hit writer's block, and I have a hard time getting past it. And that's when I go and I sit back down and I get the sticky notes out. I'm writing stuff. I look crazy. There's sticky notes everywhere, and then I come up with a like a timeline of what needs to happen to get the story going again.
Okay. Well, that's quite interesting. You're a teacher as well, right?
Yeah, I teach 6th grade English.
Oh, okay. Have you brought any of those ideas or anything like that into the books that you've written, especially dealing with children at that age?
Yeah, there's, you know, as somebody who teaches students how to recognize plot structure, I think that helps me a lot when I'm plotting my books because, you know, most stories and most successful stories, they follow a typical, you know, structure. And there's a million different things, but what we teach as, you know, in public school is we teach the plot mountain. And so I think I try to keep that in mind as I'm writing the book. You know, you're leading up to the climax of the story where everything gets, you know, really crazy and it's that turning point. That helps me a lot. I know I have one project that I'm working on. It's actually a rewrite of the book that I wrote when I was in middle school. And I'm kind of writing that for the age group that I teach, trying to keep them in mind. And since I work with them all day, every day, it's pretty easy to write as if I was a middle schooler because I talk to them all day. So I'm working on a project that would be specifically for that age group because the newer books are intended for adults. And they always ask me, you know, can we read your books? And I'm like, well, I don't think that's such a good idea. But so I want to write something specifically for that age group so I can say, yes, you can read this one. And your parents hopefully won't get mad at me.
You actually brought up the mountain. I remember that from the 6th grade where you have your rising information. I forgot what it was called. Then you got the climax. Then you have your denouement, and then your conclusion. I just remember denouement because my teacher brought that up so much. And I was like, okay, so when I look at stories, I always think about that, especially when you come with Shakespeare because his stuff was always written in that type of fashion. So it's good to hear somebody say something like that to bring that back to mind. Calibas, what do you think when you write stuff? Do you try to plan it out as well in the future? If you're going to do, how do you put it? If it's going to be a continuation with your book, do you think about, you know, having something from a first book that carries on in a different book so it's all planned out, or do you just go with the flow?
Ooh, that actually, to be honest with you, if I look at it as one story hits me, and then if I want to bring something over, I kind of like I'll drop like maybe like a hint of something because I already have this second book or whatever in mind for it, and then I can carry it over to the second book, and they'll be like, "Oh, that's what he was talking back in so and so." You know what I mean? To bring it over like that. But I think the most dangerous thing of, you know, you might build too much of a climax up. And I think that's what happened to me in my first book, because as we talked about earlier, when I went back to read it, I was like, what the hell? What were you thinking when you know what I mean? And I got to remember that December 6th, 2014, no, December 7th. I remember because it was Pearl Harbor. So my book launches and I'm all excited, and I've got coworkers, you know, buying some books from me and everything else. And I think I like, and it took me like last year to actually break the $30 mark over everything I had spent producing the book, you know. But when I went to read it, I was just like, wow. And I had so much going on. So much going on with the character development. And I was trying to push everything in there so I could have that copyright, because that was my main important thing, having that copyright, and I didn't have to rewrite my book. So because with vampires, werewolves, and all this other stuff, you've got to compete with White Wolf. You've got to compete with anybody else who's done Bram Stoker's Dracula. You can't use a lot of that stuff. You can use the lore and the folklore, but you can't use specific things to tailor, that were tailored to that stuff. And that always bugged me, because I would write something and then I would watch Underworld and go, I've got to change half my book. This is unreal. And then White Wolf started suing everybody. And I was like, I got to change a lot, because I had created a prince of the city, and you can't do any of that. So you had to take all that out. I mean, thank God now the new thing that the Oscarith is pretty much all me. I didn't have to really change much, but the people, and then building it up. I have the ending, which is great, and I have this great big part, but I don't have that climax. Other than I know I want the bad guys to fight the good guys, but that's everything. You know what I mean? It's got to kind of, weave that organic mesh and not be cartoonish, not be too childish, but it still allow for, because I'm dealing with the cyberpunk realm. There's a lot of anime out there. There's a lot of stuff that people are going to start clicking and going, hey, you know what I mean? Not to mention the game Cyberpunk, that's now a video game.
Yeah.
And I played it. So, anything that I associated with that, I got to throw that out. I got to come at it with a whole new different angle. So that whole up and down with the roller coaster is so different, because my stuff only comes in blotches, and I don't know why. And it's usually the end first for me. That whole ending I have, and it's all resolved, and the hero usually is tragically, he wins, but he loses, or she loses. And that's another thing. Have you, JM, have you thought about that? I mean, the woman presence, because what I hate, and I noticed that I didn't, even in my first book, none of my women are that secondary damsel in distress, cowering in the corner. Because all my life I've been surrounded by my mother, my grandmother. These women didn't take no guff. You know what I mean? I mean, it was, I just don't, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you don't want to make them too malish.
Yeah.
And then the men kind of look like, hey, well, let her do everything. I'll just stay back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I've that strong woman lead, I always think that there's a better, stronger presence for that, especially nowadays. You need that. You need to see that, that there can be that nice female presence, still feminine, yet in control.
Yeah.
And willing to sacrifice everything, just like any other male character in there. I just don't. I hate seeing that. It's like when we role play, we have that one guy that always wants to throw his character away for the group. And I'm like, well, if you stop and think a little bit, you can really kind of get out of this. You don't have to pull the, self-sacrificing hero.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, I think my favorite thing about, creating strong female characters, and something that I had to kind of learn when I was writing the first draft of Curse of the Blood Queen, I had an editor tell me that my main character, her name's Winnie. I had someone say that she was kind of a Mary Sue, where she was, she was too perfect. She was too powerful. And I didn't see it that way, but when I, was reading through it, I realized that I had a lot of work to do as far as like character development. And so when it comes to really any character, male, female, or anything, I just try to make sure that they have a really good balance of strengths and weaknesses. And so I do like a character profile. And so maybe a character is, they're a really good fighter, but, their weakness is X, Y, and Z. And I try to have it balanced for, both sides. That way, just because the character, she's female, but that doesn't mean she's all powerful, but it also doesn't mean she doesn't make mistakes. Like I said, I feel like you just have to have that balance. one of my kind of my main female characters that I always think back to when I was growing up and like falling in love with fiction and fantasy and all this stuff is, we talked about this last time, is always Buffy and Charmed.
Oh
And
man,
they were, you know, these
love Charm
powerful,
too.
strong women but they made mistakes all the time, you know. Whether, you know, for I'm thinking of Charmed, for Phoebe, it was always her heart. She just loved so hard for
Yeah.
everything and everyone, and so that got her in troubling situations sometimes. And the same thing with Buffy, you know, her flaw was kind of the need to be normal versus the powerful slayer, and how that sometimes got her into situations that weren't good. And so I like to think about that with my characters, where, you know, I always figure out what's their like deep-seated fear and desire. What that way I can use that to drive their actions and their choices and their dialogue and the way that they talk to people. Because I feel like if you have that balance, then I don't want to say you don't have to worry about somebody being like too powerful or a Mary Sue or unlikable. Well, not necessarily unlikable. Sometimes that's a good thing, right? To have a character that everybody's like, man, that guy's an asshole.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
but I just like to make sure that I have that balance, so that way you do have strong female characters. But I think it's also important, especially for our younger readers, to see that you can be strong and powerful, but you can also make mistakes, and that's also okay. Like you said, they win, but they also lose. So it's like they have to make sacrifices and they have to make choices. And I think that that can be a really powerful tool for character arcs. How do they overcome the mistakes that they make? Sorry.
Most definitely. You know,
Sorry.
I was thinking about that, like with my villain, because I've always said that I don't like the villain who's saying I'm doing it to save the world, or to make room in the universe, like the Thanoses and the Ra's al Ghuls. I don't like that. I like a villain simply just to be what he is. I'm hurting, so now I need to make the world hurt, not just you, but the world. I think those are the best villains, because ultimately, when you defeat that, you know what I mean? That's good triumphing over evil, because we just don't have that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry to say, in modern day storytelling, everybody loses. It just I get so, I'm like, where's the hope? We don't have that anymore
Mm-hmm.
in stories anymore. Everybody seems to, especially in the horror films, you know, just when you think it's over. We watched Final Destination, is that it? The Final Destination, Bloodlines, or whatever it was.
Haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, I haven't seen it either.
Oh my god. I oh, okay, you know what I mean? It's been a while since I've had a gore fest, you know. I mean, and I'm surprised, because I used to love that stuff, like, oh my god, yeah. And now I'm like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
oh, okay, you know. I mean, still a great movie, you know what I mean? But I just noticed that, you know, from the 70s to the 80s, the good guys always, remember, was that Megaforce? The good guys always win, even in the 80s, right?
Yeah.
Not anymore.
Yeah.
You know, and I think, you know, that's a message that needs to be done. Hope. Give us some heroes. I really don't care what gender they are. I don't care if they're non-binary. Just give me somebody that's going to give me some hope at the end of it, so I can say I can push on. You know what I mean? I can push on, because this person said it's gonna be rough, but we can make it, you know?
Yeah. I think one of my favorite like character types is always the morally gray hero, where they will win at what cost, it doesn't matter, because they're, you know, they're like morally gray. They'll do whatever it takes to win. And I think those are always my favorite characters, because I think they're so just like complex when you look at what fuels them. Like, I think of the villain, you're mentioning villains who I was hurt, and so the rest of the world has to hurt. You know, I already mentioned Queen Boudica. She's a historical figure who's the villain in my book. She comes back as a vengeful spirit. And she's very much that way, where she was hurt by the Romans. They came in and they hurt her and her two daughters. And so she burnt 3 of their cities to the ground. She killed everybody anybody in those cities. And it's like she makes the perfect villain, but it's like you kind of understand why. Like you said,
Yeah.
you hurt me, so I'm going to hurt you and everybody else. It doesn't matter who stands in the way. And those are my favorite kind of characters, where they are they have some sort of like just a really fatal flaw, and they make the best villains that you almost want to root for them. Like I have a little note in the back of my book that says, like, to the spirit of Queen Boudica, I don't think you're a villain. You know, please don't come and haunt me. That's not actually what it says, but that's like the gist of it. But I just think that those are such fun characters to see on film, to read about, to write about, because it's like you want to root for them, but you also know like you're still the bad guy, and I kind of have to like get rid of you at some point.
Yeah. That's kind of
they're
that's kind of what.
most compelling characters too, though.
Yeah.
When they're real rounded like that, so I definitely understand that.
Yeah. I mean, and let me ask you this: since you go down that path, when you're writing about something like when I started doing the whole writing about the demons and stuff, I went back and I had asked somebody, I'm like, when I write out these names and things, and the guy was like, oh, you might not really want to use their names. Perhaps you might want to, you know what I mean? You just don't want to hit that tone. And I was like, interesting that you should say that. You know what I mean? I took his advice, but I was like, I was just going through just naming demons. Just, hey, you got this guy, you got this guy.
All the demons are like in your room, like, why is he writing about us?
Yeah, right. Hey, he got that wrong. I didn't do that.
I didn't do that. That's not how you spell my name. That's not how you pronounce it.
So, I really kind of got into that whole mythology of that. And then, of course, you kind of want to be respectful for certain readers, and you don't want to alienate certain readers, when you do that, and that kind of got to me to be that 1.2, I want to write what I want to write, but at the same time, I'm not here to offend anybody or, make light of anyone's religious beliefs, or, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it took me a little bit to realize how to do certain things and how to reword certain things. Did you have that kind of dilemma when you were writing about the vengeful spirit stuff, and you know what I mean?
Yeah, I've had that dilemma a couple times, because I blend a lot of history in with the books. So, like, for example, there's the Great Chicago Fire of 1871 was supposedly caused by a cow, Mrs. O'Leary's cow. And so in my book, the vengeful spirit Boudica, who's a fire wielder, actually starts the fire. But there's characters in there that, these were real people. And for example, in book 2, I used Mayor Medill, who was the actual mayor of the time. And I made him a character in the book. And when I was doing research about him, he didn't seem like the best guy. I was reading some of the things that he wrote about. Particularly, one of my characters is Irish, and he just wrote some really nasty pieces in the newspaper that he ran about Irish people. And so I was trying to think of how that would correlate with their character dynamic. But it's like at the same time, he was a real person, and he has real family nowadays. And I mean, I don't foresee it being a problem unless my book like magically blows up overnight, which still hoping for, but right, yeah. I do worry about that of, having these characters, like you want to be respectful, but you also want it to be true to the story. And so like with his character, he very clearly did not like Irish people. And so he's not very kind to the character Tara, who is Irish. And so again, it's just like such a gray area of like, I want to be true to the history, but I also don't want to offend his like modern day family. I guess that's what the disclaimer in your copyright page is, that it says something about like all characters, places, events, and names are a product of the author's imagination. I mean, kind of, but
yeah,
it is difficult. And with someone like Boudica, like I'm kind of her biggest fan. I think she was awesome because that right there, she was just such a big example of a woman in power during a time when women were not in power very often. And the Romans did not recognize her leadership, and they underestimated her. And she was defeated in battle eventually, but she she gathered hundreds of thousands of tribes within what is now Britain, and led this massive attack on Rome and was mostly successful up until the very last point. Unfortunately, the Romans just had better war strategies, but I want to be like respectful to this person that was a real historical figure while also having her like cast as the villain. I remember when I was writing it, I just said, like, I remember saying out loud, Boudica, please don't haunt me. Like, I mean, I spent so much love sending your way. I'm so sorry they hurt you. But to kind of counteract that, I spent a good deal of time, not a good deal of time, but there's probably 3 major scenes that are from her perspective where you get a look at her history and her story, and you find out why she did what she did, because her and the main character share this connection. It's a curse, right? From the title. So they share this connection, and the queen shares her memories with Winnie, the main character. And so that was my way of having her as the villain, but also telling the reader why, so they would understand her, because it's such a powerful story. And I mean, it's something that you see throughout history all of the time, women who are just absolutely villainized because they were in power. So it is a very difficult thing to balance, I think.
I was going to say it sounds like a very interesting character. There was a movie that came out 5 or 6 years ago about the warrior queen of Jhansi, who fought the English colonization, and she was an Indian queen, and I absolutely loved that movie. Same storyline, they villainized her because she defied English rule and wanted to keep her country from being colonized. But the movie was fantastic, and not a lot of people saw it. I only went because my daughter wanted to see it, and then I thoroughly enjoyed it. So it seems like there's so many characters that you get to see that do the same type of thing that your character did, and sounds fantastic. I probably gonna have to let my daughter know about that so she can look that up as well. So it sounds exciting.
Yeah.
Well, I want you to send me your links so I can put that out on the portal and my personal page. You know what I mean? Just to keep shouting you out, because, like Mark said, I mean, your book sounds amazing.
Thank you.
I definitely want to get both books. Then, of course, I want you to sign them when I see you at Convivial.
Of
So, but it's just, I mean, for us, having you here is such a gift, and hearing your story, because I'm telling you, I dig what you're saying. I love it. I really, honestly, I cannot wait to actually. I'll be honest with you. I'm going to get the books because I want you to sign them so I can have them up there. But I definitely want the audio versions.
Yeah.
Because I can sit around work all day with my headset in and just keep on going. You know what I mean? Plus, I just think it would be awesome to have that, to hear that, that whole setting.
Well, and the narrator, she did, like, I've already said that she's done a fantastic job, but with the accents, but there's parts where there's spirits talking, and she layered voices on top of each other. So there's like a whisper, and there's like a talking voice, and then there's another one kind of in the background, and there's reverb. And the first time I heard it, my skin, like, I got goosebumps because it was so like creepy and kind of ethereal sounding. She did so good. I cannot wait for people to hear it, because anytime like Death speaks directly to the main character, because she's a medium, so anytime Death speaks or a spirit speaks, it sounds so cool. She did such a good job.
Yeah, I can't wait. Awesome. So definitely let us know, because I'll definitely pick it up on audio as well, because I love audiobooks. But I probably, like Calibas, I'll definitely get the other versions as well to have you sign it. And my daughter reads when she works overnight, and she loves these fantasy type books. So I'll probably buy it for her so she can read it as well while she's at work.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me.
You're very welcome.
Oh no, I mean, again, we love having you. I mean, you're the one giving us the gift, because this is what I really love for the Cosmic Portal. I wanted to do authors. Because I kept telling Mark, I said, look, I mean, we've had celebrities on there, and don't get me wrong, I love the celebrities. But when you have certain celebrities on 4 or 5 times, you know, I recently now have so much of a new respect for like the stuntmen. I want the stuntmen more than I do the celebrities on the shows, because they're the guys that did all the real action. You know what I mean? All the real gunplay, all the real, all the explosions. And then when you get an author on, you guys really paint the world. The director may shoot it or whatever else, but that's the world that you painted and created. And now we get to hear how you envisioned the world versus how it was shot, how and then now that you're going to have audio to it, now your world is really, in my view, brought to life, because now we have this audio behind it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it's definitely going to be a treat to have that, because when I'm there at work, I can pop that in and just keep right on going. You know what I mean? And that's going to be great. Hearing that and doing all that. Oh, what is this? An audiobook can set the dark. Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially if you're like in the dark and it's creepy. Maybe have like a candle lit and you hear the ghosts speaking with the like creepy whispers. Ooh, that would be so creepy.
And that's even better. That's even better for me, because I mean, it's just been a long time since I've heard something that hasn't been so, I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for? So, agenda driven, where we're going, what? Just tell me a good story. That's all I want, is a good story. That's all I want, is a good story. It doesn't have to be connected to 30 or 40 years of canon. Just give me a good story. So I'm looking so much outside of my box of stuff. I'm into Korean dramas now, and I never thought that I would be sitting there. And the only thing that bums me out is when I have to go, I just don't feel like reading today. Dub it in English.
That's what audiobooks for.
Right? So, again, I want you to come back. You know what I mean? Please. Instagram, actually, Mark is taking over our Instagram account, so it'll be a little bit more coherent, because Mark is on Instagram a lot more than I am, where I'm doing more of the Facebook and YouTube stuff. Mark is doing the Instagram, and I think he's going to handle our X account. So I want you back, because I just love having you on here. I love hearing about, what you're doing and your experiences, because again, I have never got to go to Raven Con. And it's going to be, you are going to Convivio next year, right?
I haven't applied yet, but I'm hoping they'll have me back. I know I'm also hoping I can go back to RavenCon next year, because I think it's a really big anniversary. I can't remember the specific number, but it's like the anniversary of science fiction, like the creation of science fiction or something crazy. I can't remember the number. I don't know if it was like 25th or like 125th. I don't know, somewhere in there, but it's a really big anniversary.
Oh yeah, it looks like it's 100 years.
Oh yeah,
science fiction, where they coined the phrase. So it'll be the 24th through the 26th at the same hotel again. So the Virginia Crossing Hotel, which is the same area.
Yeah, I'm hoping that. I'm hoping they'll have me back. I know the next event that I'm going to is Key City Steampunk in Pennsylvania. That's coming up in August, I believe. And my mom and I will actually be performing. At last I heard we might be performing, because we do belly dance, which I'm terrified for, because I've never performed at a con before. So just adding it to my repertoire.
Well, that is awesome. Well, I'm pretty sure Convivio will definitely have you back, because I mean they seem to love all their guests. So just sign up. The applications are out.
Yeah.
For it. So sign up for it definitely, and send me your links so I can blast them out and put it out there, because I mean, again, we love having you, and I just love hearing that experience. You know what I mean? And then of course, how you told me, I definitely want that audiobook.
Yeah. And I really appreciate coming on here and talking to you guys.
Oh man, look, when I see you at Convivio, I'll be like, I need you to sign my books.
And then I need to get your books, obviously.
Well, I think you can still get it off of Lulu. My first one, but that first one, I'm telling you now, it's bad. When I went back, as a matter of fact, I I think my dad still has my my mom now has my copy that I gave my dad. I had the guy that designed my cover sign mine. I'm staring at it right now because it's over there. When I was reading it, I was like, what the? Oh,
Yeah.
I don't know if I even want anyone knowing
That's how I
about
feel
that
about
one.
yeah, that's how I feel about my first book too. It's okay. The trilogy that I published as like a teenager, I'm
Mhm.
discontinuing it for that same reason because I read it and I was like, I don't want anyone to ever see this and know that I wrote it.
Yeah, right. It's. I mean, it's got a lot of great ideas. It's just
Yeah.
there's too damn many of them, and,
Yeah. Oh,
and I
I
was like,
definitely understand.
yeah. So, but when you come back, I'll get with Mark, and we can see when you're free enough to to get some time, and we'll maybe take a theme on something on some type of book or whatever, or you could walk us through one of your first book or something like that if you wanted to. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
Um, Whatever you would like to do, because this is what this was designed for, to have authors and other special guests in the fandom, and just to help promote you guys, because you guys are very special and we need more of you in the fandom.
And trust me, like as an indie author, anything that where I can like sit and talk to people about my books and stuff helps so much. And for anybody watching, if you read an indie author's book and you really enjoy it, please tell everybody that you know, tell your friends, tell your family, and most importantly, leave reviews because that tells the internet gods that our book is worth reading when we have reviews.
Definitely.
So
Definitely. So guys, we're going to end this right here. JM is going to send me some links. I'm going to put it out there. This is her second time here on Portal Talk. We're going to get her to come back later down the road. Mark is now going to be handling all our Instagram and probably our X platform, and I'm going to do Facebook and YouTube. So come join us. Our special guest, J.M. Lee, was here for the second time. She is one of the best authors you will get to read about. I'm telling you, go out, get this book, get the audiobook when it drops, definitely, and come see us all at Convivial.